Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you haven't watched my first video, I'm Alexa, and thank you for watching. I'm here to talk about everything and anything 80s, whether it's music, movies, fashion, shows, you name it. And I might cover a little beauty, a little money saving tips. I mean, you gotta have something for everyone, right? So if you're wondering, what the hell am I doing here outside? Well, we're gonna be talking about American Horror Stories 1984, and if you haven't seen it, it takes place at a camp in the woods. I mean, typical 80s horror movie fashion. So that's why you see this beautiful setup. I wanted to get that real woodsy feel. So you could see behind me, there's some trees and grass, and if I were to move this a little bit, get that real feel for American Horror Stories in the woods. First of all, let's talk about some stuff. Here are my little notes, Let's talk about the promo. I don't know if anyone saw the first video sequence that played for the show or the premiere. This was actually made by a fan, and I know that the fan was posting, I think, content videos on Twitter, on social media, and it was so good and so 80s that it caught the attention of the producers or directors of the show. And they told the person, hey, you have awesome work and you're dedicated, let's bring you on board. So they brought him on board, or her on board, and the first promo sequence that you see is created partly by the fans, and I thought that was on point. 1984 is always a solid, one of the best years of the 80s in my opinion. I mean, come on, Purple Rain came out that year, so did 16 Candles the movie. I mean, the list goes on. The clothes, the hair, the makeup, everything was exactly how I imagined it would be for the year 1984. You could totally tell that the person in charge of the costume or wardrobe, makeup and hair and all that really did their homework, because any TV show that came out in 1984 or that was running in 1984, it's like what they were wearing, cars, outfits, hair, all of it. It was
so on point.
When I first was watching it, I was like, okay, these characters, they're a little cheesy. The acting's kind of not there. But if you think about it, like in typical 80s slasher cult movie fashion, it wasn't about the acting, it was about the blood, gore, and people's bodies. Let's just call it what it is. When you have that in mind, I kind of changed my mind and I was like, you know what? The acting might not be all there, but maybe that's what they intended, because that's exactly how 80s movies or 80s horror was made. It was just made to like shock you and bring you in. I mean, you could talk about Halloween 1978. If you've seen the original by John Carpenter, then it's a perfect example of blood and teens and showing a lot of skin. That was just the recipe, and ever since then, throughout the 80s, you had all these huge slasher films like Friday the 13th, then you talk about Nightmare on Elm Street. All of my 80s horror movie fans out there, spoiler alert, you might want to fast forward more into the video. There was this familiar plot, setting, kind of occurrence of events. First and foremost, these are people, like young adults, maybe late teens, going to a campsite that was formerly closed down because there was a mass murderer on the loose. And sure enough, like the story in Friday the 13th, the camp reopens and counselors are coming in by the van loads, or, in this case, one van. Stuff starts to happen again. Things are making noises in the night. It's like, okay, I could see the inspiration from Friday the 13th for sure. All you need is a camp, creepy campsite, mass murder on the loose, and a bunch of like young adults who are kind of dumb and fall for all the antics. So lots of falling, lots of tripping, that's all part of it. So definitely you see in the first part, Friday the 13th, and then more toward like the middle, you get that like part where two people are driving to the institute where there are patients, or psychiatric patients are being held, and they're all roaming around, wandering on the property outside of the institution, in their like little robes, like medical garments. If people are watching, you've seen Halloween. In the first Halloween, same thing happened. The beginning of that in the original, you have Dr. Loomis and the nurse going in the car and driving to the institution where Michael Myers is held. And sure enough, it's raining, it's cold, it's dark, it's scary, and all these patients are wandering around outside. What happened to them? They're let loose. And then all of a sudden, you have Michael jumping on the car and taking over the car and goes back home, and the rest is history. But same thing with American Horror Story. The two characters go to the mental institution and they are surprised to see all these patients outside roaming around, confused, disoriented. It seems like someone let them out. And then you see it goes to a scene where Mr. whatever his name is, Jangles, I think it's Jangles, Mr. Jingles. Okay, there we go. Mr. Jingles gets into the car and manages to take it away and drive to the campsite, returning to his former place of where he committed all these murders. So you get that Halloween, the original John Carpenter Halloween tribute there, and then the homage to Friday the 13th, where the whole show is taking place at the campsite and there's this murderer on the loose. But Mr. Jingles is like I said, the guy who was committing all the crimes. If you've seen Friday the 13th, he is the Jason Voorhees of American Horror Story 1984. They call him Mr. Jingles because he carries this little ring of keys with him and they jingle. Okay, I'm gonna stop laughing. If you hear that, he's coming for you or he's around. All this commotion about Mr. Jingles, but the real spooky character, I mean the real creep in this is none other than Richard Ramirez himself. For those who might not know, Richard Ramirez was actually a real serial killer. Back in 1984 and 1985, he killed over 10 people, and it was all in the Los Angeles County areas. I mean, my mom remembers, my grandparents remember. I mean, he really terrorized LA County, and he was just like crazy. It's really disturbing, so if you want to look into it, go for it. But basically, this guy was a serial killer from 84 to 85. I just remember my mom telling me stories of like how they heard about it, and it was like simply one city away from us, 10 minutes either direction away from us, and he was driving from place to place and committing these murders and these crimes. The fact that they brought him into the series is something that really I did not expect at all. Like, you know, you think, okay, this is American Horror Story, this is fictional, this is fake, you know, for the most part, but bringing back this real vicious person, that's what scares me. For those who don't know, Richard is no longer with us. He's no longer living. He passed, I think, in 2013 of cancer. That consoles me a lot. Emma Roberts' character is the one who deals with him. She was attacked by him, and she talks about it throughout the show. In the beginning, there's an opening scene after the aerobics class, and Emma Roberts' character is walking out. She says this fact to this new group of people she met in the class, and she's like, you know that serial killers like to commit their crimes in the summer? And it's foreshadowing of Richard Ramirez coming into the show a little bit later on. And that was this guy's, I guess, plan was he knew it was hot that summer in 1984 and people were leaving their windows open, making it easy for him to come inside and commit these crimes. I mean, forget about Mr. Jangles. This Richard Ramirez in the series, that's what's creepy. Okay, music. So when I was watching, I was like, all right, what kind of 80s hits or 80s bops are they playing through this series? So first we have Bananarama's Cruel Summer. They played Rockwell's Somebody's Watching Me. They played Def Leppard's song Photograph, and one of my favorites of all time, Hall & Oates' song Private Eyes. On Spotify, you can find the playlist for the first American Horror Story If you want, I could link that down below and you could follow through with all these songs in the show. I know it's getting dark. I probably should get out before someone gets me, but I just wanted to say that in the next couple days I will be posting pops for sale. Some will be 80s themed, some will not be, but everyone's welcome to join in on the fun. I'm gonna put a link down below here. If I don't have the link now, I'll make sure to share that with everyone so that you can see what pops I have, what's for sale, and I'd be happy to help you out with that. Now that I'm safe inside the house and outside of the scary outdoors, if you remember in last week's video, I did mention the unfortunate passing of Rick Ocasek of the Cars. The Killers did a tribute during their show in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania to the late singer. The Killers were playing their song All These Things That I've Done and transitioned into My Best Friend's Girl, which is a big hit by the Cars, well-known 80s classic, but another favorite of mine of the entire decade and of the Cars period. So to have the Killers, one of my favorite bands and biggest bands that I respect, covering that song by the Cars, I mean, when I watched it, I got chills. Brandon even mentioned that Rick Ocasek was his first king, discovered their greatest hits CD or album when he was 13 and how much it meant to him. And for all those who know the Killers, they have always had that synth pop 80s inspiration, and you could definitely see where they get that inspo, and I just thought that was really nice tribute to Rick. And the Killers can never disappoint. I saw them live a few years back and I wouldn't change it for the world. If you haven't seen the Killers live, you have to go see them. Definitely put it on your bucket list. I mean, if you love 80s, you're gonna love the Killers. If you're interested in watching the Killers tribute to the Cars, I'll put the link down below in the description so you can give it a listen and see what you think for yourself. I don't think you'll be disappointed, because I sure wasn't.